You're listening to a CNA podcast.
Welcome back to another episode of the Work It podcast. It's Tiffany and Gerald, and today's topic was actually inspired by a previous topic we did.
Yeah, we had a career coach, Chi Ziyan, on our show last month. She talked about how people, when you let them go, you should let them go as compassionately as you can. And I think she mentioned one important point about how losing a job is one of life's major stresses.
Yes.
Very traumatic, just like divorce or even serious illness. If the reason for being let go is unclear or it feels unfair, then I think we can really make you feel that it's really more difficult to let go.
Yeah, so it got me thinking after that recording, are there ways that companies dismiss people which may not feel right? And when exactly does it cross the line to become a wrongful dismissal?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of cases I've personally heard before of how people are being forced to quit.
Okay.
And they cite retrenchment as a reason, but it's just confused. Am I being dismissed or am I being retrenched?
So do I quit or is this a retrenchment?
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I encountered someone before, let's just call her Jane for simplicity. She was asked to resign within 48 hours.
Asked
right?
to resign, okay.
Otherwise, she will be fired.
So why don't they just fire her?
Yeah, I don't know. And there's no clear reasons why. And then the reasons given to her was because business was not doing well, her performance was not up to mark. She's worked there for about 11 months. So it just hit her all at one go. It came just before Chinese New Year.
Okay, that's bad.
And I know that she just didn't know what to tell her family members during the festive period.
Yeah.
With all the non-clarity, a lot of mystery around the situation, I think it was really harder for her to let go, find closure, and to resume her job search, right?
Yeah.
So it felt like a retrenchment for her, except that it's not.
Yeah, so I think there are a lot of these kind of questions that not only, Jane, the person that we mentioned, would have to go through. So that's why today we have Clarence Ding. He's a partner at Ashurst law firm to explain all of this to us. Welcome, Clarence.
Hi, thanks for having me.
You deal a lot with the legal side of employment issues. Before we started, you say that you work with a lot of companies, advising them on what to do when they have employment legal issues. But let's start with a type of dismissal that we've often hear about, a disguised retrenchment. Okay, tell me, what is a disguised retrenchment and how is that different from a standard retrenchment?
Yeah, that's a great place to start because we are seeing a lot of these in recent times. A disguised retrenchment essentially is when the company is actually retrenching its employees, but it doesn't want to call it that because by saying that, then it might trigger certain obligations, like, for example, the requirement to pay retrenchment benefits. And companies that are cash-strapped in that position already will want to do everything that they can in order to minimize whatever monies they need to spend in downsizing their workforce. So they would disguise it. They would call it something else. They might ask for volunteers to resign.
Right.
They may use some other excuse to exit an employee, anything but the real reason.
So what kind of excuses would they use to get an employee to voluntarily resign?
They might just ask or tell them that I don't think it's working out between us. Maybe you want to consider resignation, and employees will know at the back of their mind the alternative to that is if I don't resign, I may be pushed out. And between the two, which looks worse on my CV when I apply for another job? At least if I said that I'd resign, it looks like I still have control and that it was personal reasons that drove me to leave rather than because A, I wasn't good enough, B, I was surplus to requirements and therefore was let go.
So there's this hanging fear, I guess, from the employee's point of view that if I don't offer to resign, then how am I going to explain to the next employer?
It's like being caught in a rock and a hard place, right? One of them is the company decides that you have to go. The other one is you voluntarily resign. Then maybe it's easier to explain that, I chose to leave the company.
Pretty much. And then by placing that decision on the employee, the company can then hand on heart say, well, actually, they resigned. They weren't retrenched. They weren't made redundant. Therefore, what are my obligations to them? Only pay them their notice. I don't need to pay retrenchment benefits to them. And the company saves a few dollars on that front.
Well, it really sounds like the person is helpless in this particular case. Is there any way that some of these communications can be used later on if, let's say, the employee want to seek redress or something like that?
Yeah, something that a lot of employees don't realize under Singapore law is that if you were forced to resign, that is actually a basis for the employee to say they were wrongfully dismissed. And they could actually seek recourse from the MOM, from the TADM, or even bring a claim at the Employment Claims Tribunal if they wanted to.
But they would have to show evidence to prove that they were forced to resign. So it could be in text or an email.
Yeah, so for involuntary resignations, that's the technical term for it. It's quite easy because you just show an email thread or a WhatsApp message where the company has said, why don't you resign? Or it would be better if you resign. That's almost forcing the employee out. So that would give them recourse.
Yeah.
But again, not many employees know this.
Yeah. And even if they did get the recourse, what's the most they can get out of this situation?
Yeah, generally it would be the amount the company would have had to pay the employee in order to lawfully terminate them. In most cases, you're looking at the notice period. In the case where the forced resignation was in the context of a wider restructuring and they were made redundant, they could potentially claim their retrenchment benefits also.
But then it's not legally mandated that companies need to pay the retrenchment package. So in this case, if I voluntarily resign, I would have to serve 1 month's notice. Or if the company decides to fire me, they will have to pay me back that 1 month's notice as well. So in that sense, there's no difference in the cash outcome.
But if the employee brought a claim not in the Employment Claims Tribunal, but say they brought it in court, they could claim other types of damages. For example, loss of earning potential, the inability to find a job, and maybe the manner in which they left, that cloud of uncertainty caused them to lose out on certain other opportunities. They could claim that potentially. But again, it's about putting a lot of money in there in order to get an outcome. Not many employees feel that it's worth the time and effort.
In Jane's case, she did get back 1 month notice, and I think when asked what other action she would consider, I think she just said it's too much hassle. And it's not worth it.
She just wants to move on.
I guess that's what most people want. Once you have been dealt this hand, you just want to find a better, more secure role next.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen cases where they're not calling this retrenchment, but then they go through the long process of putting you on the performance improvement plan? What would your advice be?
Yeah, I typically always say that it's very dicey to put an employee through a PIP for the simple reason that there's always going to be a gap in perception. Employees always think of themselves as highly performing individuals. Company may have a different view of them. But at the end of the day, even if you put an employee on a PIP and you decide they are not up to standard and we want to exit them, you still need to give them notice, pay them salary in lieu of their notice. That's no different from just saying right from the start, I have a right under the contract to terminate your employment at any time without giving any reason, so long as I give you the notice or the payment in lieu. That actually stands the company in a much better position because it avoids that mess of talking about performance and whether the employee was given a fair chance to prove themselves.
So what Clarence is saying, it's better that the company just tell you that, okay, we are ending your employment and that's it, rather than try to put you through
this long-drawn process,
long-drawn process of trying to make you feel like you could earn back your stay, but actually the writing's on the wall, it's been decided.
It does sound a bit harsh to say we are almost like the US where it's at will employment. I can get rid of an employee anytime I want just by giving notice. But when you consider the alternative where you would put them through a PIP, make them question their own abilities, and employees these days, some of them fall into depression because of these workplace issues they're facing, you think which actually is the better outcome for the employee. And I think a lot of the time, it is actually just a clean break from the company and everyone just moves on.
I just want to state it very clearly for our listeners is that not everyone who goes through PIP, it's a downward spiral from there, right? Because there are some managers who are hoping that they can help to get you back up to speed. But in this context, we're really talking about companies that they already have this one-track mind of getting rid of you. There's another scenario where I've heard of where someone is told that a company is changing directions and they're cutting headcount. You accept that and you move on. But then you find out that they're hiring again for a similar role. In this case, is it considered like a wrongful dismissal? What if you already have that retrenchment package, but then a few months later, you look at the job listings and you're, why are they hiring for my position again?
Yeah, that's a good observation. We've come across this several times in my work, and it could be a number of reasons. Some of them are not necessarily very nefarious. It could just be that the companies decided they actually need this line of work, or they've finally turned the corner and they are able to re-establish that business line and therefore they want to hire. I think if you're the employee, you were let go, but you got a fair package. At the end of the day, I think move on.
Yeah.
If there is a clause, and we do see this sometimes in the agreement that says that you are welcome to reapply for any roles that come up in the next 12 months. If you're successful in that role, we will accept you back into employment, but you need to return that package that we gave you.
Oh.
Yeah.
It could be in the clause, so you have to read the fine print.
Yeah. So it's really up to the employee at the end of the day. Do they value the package they got more, or do they value having employment in this particular company more?
Honestly, I think it would be quite rare to go back, right, to a company, because no matter what, I think there will always be some form of hurt and emotion that person might carry.
Yeah, but I think this is where a process that is run compassionately actually there's a net benefit to both parties, because employee leaves feeling that they were treated fairly. And if there's an opportunity for them to come back, there's still a lot of goodwill that exists between the two. A lot of the companies that we advise are very acutely aware of this, where we tell them legally this is all you need to do. And the response is yes, but we really want to do a bit more for them. And I think it's great to see that kind of culture coming through with a lot of the companies we work with.
Yeah.
I also have come across situations before where people are just redeployed to do something totally different, and they are told that if you cannot perform, then you got to go. And you should just resign.
Okay.
So I've seen one example of a car salesman, for example, selling cars in a gallery, being asked to be deployed into an after-sales service in the car workshop, handling the parts.
But he doesn't have the skill set.
Yeah, the skill set is not there. And of course, the person has been doing car sales for so long. And he just feels, what am I supposed to do here? So in the end, it was like, if you cannot do it, if you're not happy about it, why don't you quit?
Yeah, I think that's a bit unfair on the employee, to be honest. I think if you realistically expect somebody to do something that they are not equipped to do, the very least that the company should do is to provide upskilling opportunities and training for the individual to be able to function in that role. And of course, to give them a sufficiently long runway for them to prove themselves. At the end of that, if it doesn't work out, you could very well say, we've given you all reasonable opportunities. I'm afraid we need to part ways. And then do it in a way that's compassionate.
Would this sort of situation still be termed as like unlawful?
I don't think it's unlawful per se. It all comes down to how reasonable both the company and the employee were in discussing the change of scope and what sort of tools were made available to the individual. I think if you're really being asked to pivot to something that's completely out of your wheelhouse and you don't see any prospect for you succeeding in that role, it's also the onus, I believe, on the employee to have that frank discussion with the company to say, I don't think this is going to work out. At least have that recorded. Then when you have a discussion down the line around why are you failing at this? Why aren't you performing at the standard we need you to do? At least you can say,
But I told you
I had to go at this. I did my best. But obviously, given I don't have the skill set for this, you can't really just squeeze a round peg into a square hole at the end of the day.
So I have friends who were put on gardening leave before, where you get paid but you don't have to turn up for work. So why do companies offer this as an option? And what kind of people do they usually offer this to?
Yeah, there could be a number of reasons for this. One could be by not requiring the employee to work, you can almost ring fence the company from them so that they wouldn't try to do anything funny from within, like take certain documents or contact clients or customers. But another reason also is to just give the employee time to maybe start looking for a new job.
Okay.
And they don't need to worry about their own existing obligations to the company, and it helps the company to transition them out as well. So a variety of reasons, not all of them are nefarious.
Yeah, but then the first one that you mentioned sounds like already the relationship has broken. Why don't they just immediately tell this employee that it's not going to work out and goodbye?
A lot of the times it's because the company wants to keep the employee out of the market for a period of time. Now, we stray into the issue of post-termination restraints here. In Singapore, the position is that post-termination restraints are generally difficult to enforce. And it's fairly easy for an employee to try and strike that down on the basis that it's not reasonable, it doesn't protect any interests. Keeping the employee in your workforce and telling them, I'm still paying your salary, but you just sit at home, you don't need to come in, is one way to achieve that. They get paid their salary, but they're not doing any work. They can't join the competitor for a period of time.
It sounds like they will be offering this more so for people in higher management maybe people with the ability to take the company's secrets, so to speak, and take it to the competitor.
Yeah, so you're looking at very senior executives, managers in charge of big teams, or technical people like engineers or technicians who have access to trade secrets or your confidential formula in how you do certain things. And you just want to ensure that they are not trying to steal these from the company.
So circling back to the earlier point, right? Terminating the employment contract without having to tell you to resign on your own. If that's more straightforward, why are companies not doing that?
Yeah.
Why would they want to try to convince the employee to leave
And then
on
go
their
through
own?
the whole retrenchment exercise and everything. I mean, legally, I'm allowed to just say, sorry, you're fired.
I think there are a few reasons. I think one is that there's always a view that by giving reasons, you come across as more compassionate. Therefore, a lot of companies are not comfortable with the idea of just saying, here's a notice. A lot of companies will want to at least explain. And employees also would be asking questions. Why am I being let go? Are there reasons behind this? Is it because I raised a grievance last month about my manager? Is that why? Am I being retaliated? A lot of companies want to just set the record straight. So they would rather just give the reason. Now, if the reason is the truthful reason, then well and good. But what happens if the company is actually retaliating against the employee?
Yeah.
You're not going to say that.
Of course.
You're going to give a totally different reason. And the risk for the company in that case is the employee is going to know that's the wrong reason and they may challenge the decision to terminate them.
It sounds to me like it's a vicious circle because you don't have to actually explain to people why you are terminating them, but out of the goodness of your heart, and you obviously want to gain some brownie points. So we explain. But then sometimes in the explanation, things get lost. So the message might get lost, or the message might get contorted, or certain things you can't say because, like you earlier pointed out, it might come across as, oh, this is considered discrimination or wrongful, and I'm going to take it up with MOM.
I think if companies are able to communicate properly and they do it with the heart, then I think it's all right to do that. But the problem is many, they don't. They're just trying to use this as a reason to get their own advantage. Then that doesn't work out very well.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, it's about doing right by your employees. In some cases, it might be to actually tell them the reasons behind this, hope for some understanding. But in other cases, where there is a risk because maybe the relationship has already broken down to a certain extent, giving a reason may just entangle the company and the employee in further dispute, and that's not good for either party. You may want to try and draw a line under that and just say, I'm contractually entitled to do this, and that's all I am doing.
Okay. Now I'm sitting in the seat of an employee, and I've just been told that my role is ending. What should my first questions be to the person sitting across the table to figure out what kind of dismissal I'm given?
I will ask for the reason. If the reason is not forthcoming, I will try and think about circumstantially what's going on with the organization. If my line manager is not giving me the answer that I need, I'm naturally going to talk to my colleagues and try to find out what's actually happening. Maybe I'm close to the person in HR. They may tell me the reason. Maybe my skip line manager, the 1-2 lines up, might be willing to say something about that. I'll try to put a picture together just so that I know I'm not being gaslighted.
Okay.
And that any document I'm asked to sign is actually one that reflects a fair deal for me at the end of the day.
So you would recommend not to sign any contract or document immediately?
Yeah, as
Just
a lawyer, I would
As a
say
lawyer.
never sign anything until you've either gotten advice or you are comfortable with and you understand what you're being asked to sign.
Okay.
Yeah, but the sad thing is, usually the signing comes with a time limit, right? They tell you within 24 hours, you have to either sign this or this other thing will happen.
In my experience, the shorter the timeline, the more suspicious an employee will get. Because why is it so urgent? Why are you giving me until the end of today to make up my mind about this?
Or before you leave this room.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, what are you going to do? Lock me in here until I
Exactly.
make up my mind?
So at that point, right, if it seems a bit suspicious, then what should we do? Like, we go to the Tadam, for example.
No, you
MOM?
can't leave the room, remember?
Oh, call a phone. Call a friend.
Call the police.
Call the police.
They're not letting me out.
I think if you're the employee, you shouldn't sign anything. And I think it's a perfectly reasonable request to say, I am being presented with a document that I don't fully understand. What you've told me in this meeting is completely new to me. I need time to digest this and process whatever you shared. At the very least, give me a few days to mull this over. If the company is still insisting that this must be done, if you're unionized, please go call up your union, get them to come in and exert some kind of pressure on the company. If you're not unionized, if you're middle management, let's say, call a lawyer, find out what your rights are. Because it seems to me like you're being squeezed in that position. You need to gather whatever ammunition you have, whatever leverage you have against the company.
Yeah, I think intrinsically you will know when the company is not treating you fairly.
Yes.
And if in doubt, like you say, don't sign anything, check with somebody else first. But I've also seen cases where people have walked away with saying, I'm not entirely 100% happy with what I'm getting, but it's enough for me to move on to the next stage of my life. And do I really want to continue fighting this, or do I really want to win this and work with people who obviously don't want me in here? It's going to be hard, right?
Yeah, I think realistically speaking, most people in this situation, when they are being told that they have to go, the first thing on their mind would be why, and then after that would be like, what's next?
Yes.
I don't think I want to hang around for that long. They may not want to understand too much. They just want to move on with their life.
That's
so
right.
I think this is also a good opportunity for all workers and employees who are listening in to really remember that there's no such thing as a secure employment, and it's really important that we take care of ourselves. Now that you know that the contract can just be terminated without any explanation to you, then you should be even more prepared for that day.
I think constantly trying to upskill yourself, make yourself relevant to the work you're doing, be aware of the challenges. It's not just the company. Sometimes it's also AI, for example, that could come in and take over your role.
Yeah.
Are you prepared for that? What's the backup plan for you?
Thank you so much, Clarence, for your time and your insights. I hope that the tips that you have shared today will at least help us to be able to be prepared.
Thank you very much.
Hello and welcome back to our Ask Me Anything segment. Now let's get straight into it. Today's question was sent in by our listener, Deborah. Deborah likes her work, but she's working with bosses who don't reply to emails until the last minute, resulting in everyone scrambling to meet deadlines. These bosses have also cancelled agreed meetings. Deborah says there is a culture of not respecting deadlines and it has messed up her work schedule. Now, here's what she wrote. My director even told his team to be mindful of how we complete the employee engagement survey because everyone's livelihood is at stake. What are the avenues that staff can use to report on toxic work environments when the conventional method of going direct to the bosses does not work? Okay.
Wow, it really sounds like Deborah likes her work, but she doesn't like her boss.
Sounds like it, yes.
I think a lot of people it sounds like from the way she described that even her colleagues may feel the same.
Yeah, and it sounds to me that there is like a form of veiled threat when the boss is like, you better be careful how you fill in that annual employee engagement survey because you might sabotage other people's jobs. You might cause all of us to be investigated or something like that.
I think it can be seen as a threat. Or it could be seen as a joke. Because I've heard how this sentence goes with a nice boss. They say, hey, don't sabo. Remember, people's jobs are at stake.
Yeah, actually their job at stake.
It's their jobs because the employee engagement survey
reflects on them, the boss, right?
Exactly. So I don't know, maybe in Deborah's case, the livelihoods here, the outcome of the survey is tied to their bonuses, maybe?
Oh, okay. How big of an impact does it have on your boss or your team bonuses?
Typically, from what I know, the employee engagement survey is done at regular intervals to help a company to understand how well engaged their employees are. Sometimes they tie it to certain goals, like the way bonuses are being distributed. Yes, for sure. Very often, if there are red flags coming out, like a very disengaged department, then that's where HR might be activated to speak to the director to find out what's happening. Can you come up with some mitigation steps to solve the issue? So I think there is a place for this type of employee engagement surveys, and for sure, employees should utilize that as much as they can. But in Deborah's case, the challenge seems to be because it's a small team.
Yes, so she could possibly be identified, right? I'm sure it's like her mannerism will show that she is already a bit disengaged or a bit unmotivated or challenged and frustrated when deadlines are rushed to be met, right?
Yeah, so I don't know, but part of me is wondering if everybody in the team is feeling the same way, then by right, the result should be consistent, right? Everybody's giving, let's say, low engagement scores. So Deborah shouldn't have to worry. But if, let's say, there is that real concern, then I would also think about how the employee engagement survey is being done. So typically when it's done professionally, that means it's done by an independent, neutral party, they would take a lot of effort to try to mask and anonymize, aggregate the statistics, the information so that nobody is identifiable.
So out of 10 companies out there, how many would utilize an independent company to run their employee engagement survey?
I think for the larger companies, they would typically go with a reputable employee engagement survey provider. I used to work in a company where I was in a team of 5. Then there was only one boss. So the 4 of us were often wondering, what should we do?
So do you all gang up against the boss? Or maybe...
We had a good boss, really good boss, right? But I think the research company came down to assure us that the way they're going to approach the study, that we can feel really confident that anything that is identifiable will be aggregated.
If
it's just like a Google form and done by HR.
And then after that, you see on top, it's like submitting as Tiffany. Then you're just like, all right, this is not a good idea. So then what other sort of avenues can you have to maybe try and change behavior?
I would think that having conversation with HR, if this is important enough and is causing you a lot of loss of productivity and also unhappiness and work-life imbalance, I think it's good to speak to HR about this and get them to come in as a neutral party to look into this situation. Maybe there has been other people who also lodged complaints or given feedback to HR before, so that there could be enough for HR to pursue a bit more clarification or investigation if needed. Of course, what you could also do is hopefully your boss gets promoted and move on. Then everything will be settled and get a new boss coming in. But that's a joke.
Or put in the company notice board like, this boss is not doing that, but
apply jobs on your boss's behalf so that he gets promoted and
try
move on
and send
somewhere.
his name to a recruiter or something like that. I think another way to do it also is that maybe if you don't have that relationship with HR, right? But if you have kind of a okay relationship with your 2-up, you can also go to the 2-up and say, look, I am struggling. I don't mean to come to you and complain about my 1-up. I do recognize that at the end of the year, my performance review will also sit on your table. So you would have a good idea of how our team is progressing, and it may look like we are always missing deadlines or we are rushing towards deadlines. I just want you to know this is the reality that we are facing in our team. I'm not trying to throw my boss under the bus. I'm just trying to explain from our point of view why we haven't been meeting deadlines. I feel that I do have bosses where I can have that conversation with if I ever do meet that situation.
I think going to your 2-up works if you're really sure that the 2-up will look out for you. I've seen how 2-ups throw you under the bus.
Okay.
Because they need your 1-up to do the work. They don't want the 1-up to change. So going out to a 2-up, you could find yourself becoming the third wheel between them. So I don't know, there's no easy answers around this, but as we said, the first thing is of course use the EES and then maybe speak to HR. And if things get really bad to the point that your livelihood is being threatened, like really legitly threatened, maybe it's time to look for something else.
I don't know your boss, Deborah, but I saw this as a red flag. Like, why would you say that me being honest in a survey is going to threaten everybody's livelihood? To me, it's a red flag, right? If your boss is joking, okay, that's fine. If you guys are just having lunch and your boss is just making, a joke out of it, it's fine. But if he's not, then I would say you need to start documenting some of these concerns that you have. If there's a text involved, keep the text, keep a screenshot of stuff or whatever, so that when you speak to HR, there's something to show for. There's a little bit of data to show for. I think these people are recalcitrant. If they say it once, they will say it a few more times. So that's our small little advice. Hopefully that helps with your predicament. If, like Deborah, you also have a work-related question that you don't know who to ask, you can send it to us. We are at cnapodcasts@mediacorp.com.sg, or you can check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Me Listen, or YouTube, where a video version of this is at. Drop us a comment. We're always reading. The team behind the Work It podcast is Ho Pei Ning, Junaini Johari, Joanne Chan, Saya Win, Alison Jenner, and Nat Fetovero. Video by Hanida Amin.
I'm Gerald.
And I'm Tiffany. No job is perfect, but toxic ones are not okay.